Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jackson here from Titanic Games. Today we're going to continue on with our survival game series, and we'll be adding some more functionality to our inventory kind of thing. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Now the first thing we're going to do is go into our blueprints folder here, and then go into inventory, objects, and we're going to open up this inventory item. So we're going to make a couple little changes here that will help us to make things a little more clear, as well as prevent any issues that we might encounter later on. So the first thing that we're going to do is take this has room on stack function, and we're going to rename it really quick just to get room on stack. And the reason for that is simply because we're not checking if we actually have room on the stack like explicitly. And by that I mean we're not returning a boolean, right? We're simply getting how much room we have on the stack. Okay, so if we open up this function again, you can see exactly how we calculate that. All right. So next what we're going to do is we're going to take this amount variable, and we want to untick editable and then tick private. And what this does is it basically makes this variable only editable in this class, all right, in this blueprint. And so any other child classes cannot modify this value explicitly. All right, so if we go look at our inventory item empty here, you'll see that in the default in the default section of the details panel, we can't see that amount anymore, right? But if I, uncheck private, then you can see it. Okay, and the reason we want to make this private is so that we can't modify it in any child class, because this value represents the current amount that our items will have in our inventory, and we only want to influence that via like picking up items in the world. Okay, this is like if we change this value in a child class, that will change the starting amount, and we don't want that. Instead, we're going to create two functions that will allow us to access this variable indirectly. So we'll create a new function simply called get amount, and all this is going to do is return our amount. So we'll take this, drag off, say return node, and then drag this on to the return node, and that will create a little pin, and it can just be called amount. Okay. And then we'll create another function that we will call set amount, and that will do, what we think. It'll set it. So we'll take our amount, set it like so. We're going to add an input here. So with the function selected, go to the details panel, add a new parameter. We'll call this amount to add, and we'll make that an integer. Plug it in, and there we go. And that's really all we need to do. I guess finally, let's take get amount and make this pure and const as well. Okay. So we'll close out of the inventory item here. Let's go into our inventory item empty here, and we'll see that an error occurred here for me. I don't know if it happened to you guys, but we're going to delete this function here, has room on stack, and we're going to go to overrides, and we're going to override get room on stack, and we're just going to remove this parent function call. So it should just be like that. All right. So that's all we're going to do right there. Next, we're going to add what's called an actor component that will serve as sort of our inventory. All right, and basically by creating an actor component that will kind of contain all the logic for our inventory, we'll be able to take that component, place it on any actors that we want to, sort of be able to interact with, and maybe drag and drop items between, or add items to, or remove items, whatever. And so what that will allow us to do is, easily create like containers out of objects, so you can make like a pot that you can store things in, or a backpack. Also, you'll be able to do like lootable actors. If you kill an enemy, you can loot them, and of course have an inventory for yourself. All right. So for this, we're going to right click, create a new folder called components, and then we'll come in here, right click, create a new blueprint class of type actor component, and we'll just call this BP underscore inventory. Okay, there we go. So we'll open this up, and right away we're going to delete this event tick, but we'll keep this event begin play because we're going to use this to initialize our inventory by creating the different slots that we'll have. Okay, so the next thing that we'll do is add a couple variables. So the first one we'll call it inventory. All right, and we'll change this to a BP underscore inventory item, and we want references. All right. Next, let's click this little circle right here, and we're going to change it to an array, because we want, an array of items, not just one single item. We'll add another variable that we'll call slots, and we'll change this to an integer, and then change it back to just a single variable. Okay. Now slots will make public so that we can edit it, and what slots is going to be is how many inventory slots we have, basically. Okay. So yeah, slots will be public. Inventory, we're going to make this private again so that we can't edit it in any kind of derived classes, but we will create a function that will allow us to get our inventory if we want it. So we'll say get inventory. We'll take our inventory, drag it out here, add a return node, and then just add the pin to node, just like that. And of course it has a little error. Just hit compile and save and everything should be good. Then we'll make this pure and const, and that's all we need to do for that function. Next, we're going to create a function that will initialize our inventory component. So we'll add a function, call this initialize inventory. All right. And what this function is going to do is it's basically going to take our inventory array. We're going to make sure that it's cleared. So we're going to say clear, because just in case we have anything in the inventory, by accident or something, we'll just clear it out so that we don't have to worry about anything. Next, we'll do a for loop, and for each slot that we have, we're going to add a new item to our array of inventory items. Okay, but now since our first and last index, like kind of how a loop works, it's often zero based, so we're going to make our slots zero based. So we'll take slots and do a subtraction, and we're just going to subtract 1, plug it into last index, and then first index will be 0. All right, so let's say we have 20 slots, right? Each index will start from 0, so we'll have like from 0 to 19, but that's still 20. All right, now for the loop body, we're going to say construct object from class, and the class that we want to construct is that empty inventory item we created. So we'll search for empty, and we'll choose the BP inventory item empty. Now for outer, we're going to say self. And basically what that does, what outer means is this is the object or the class that owns this item. Okay, so we're saying that this component will own the item. And then finally, we're going to take our inventory, get it, and then just simply add the return value. And there we go. That's all we need to do. So we'll compile and save that, go back to our event graph, take our initialize inventory, drag it out here, plug it in, and there we are. So basically, when the game begins, right, any actors that have this component on it will initialize their inventory and create as many slots as they need. Okay, so by default, let's take our slots and set it to, I don't know, something like 20 maybe? 20 slots might be okay. All right. And then we can go ahead and add this to our character, and we can try to test it out really quick. So we'll come back out here to blueprints, go into core, survival character, and we're going to add a new component. And we're going to search for inventory, and you'll see the BP inventory, so we'll add that, hit compile. And if you select it, you can actually see here's that, the slots variable, so we can change it on our character really easily if we wanted, but we'll leave it at its default of 20. And then what we'll do here is we'll create a quick little debugging kind of string. So for that, we'll right click, search for the 1 key, and on pressed, we're going to take our inventory, we're going to say get inventory, and we're going to do a for each loop, plug it in, and for each element in this array, or for each item in our inventory, we're going to get its display name, and we'll print it to the screen. So we'll say print string and plug it in. Okay, so if we press play, right, and now I hit 1, we should see that it just, it shows 20 items that we just added. And there we go. So we can see that the initialization of our inventory component is already working. So that's a good first step. So we'll go back to our inventory, and we're going to add another function. So this function will be called add item, And with this function selected, we're going to add 2 new inputs. So we'll add 2 parameters. This first one, we're going to call it item to add. And we're going to make this a BP inventory item. But this time we want to choose class instead of reference. All right. This next one will be amount to add. And we'll make that an integer. Or excuse me. Yeah, there we go, an integer. All right, so this function will be called whenever we try to pick up an item in the world. And basically, we're going to try, we're going to look through our inventory, see if we have space in our inventory, check if we, if some of our items, can stack or whatever, and then we'll try to add the item. So in this function, we're going to take these 2 variables that we added, and we're going to right-click and promote them both to local variables so that it's a lot easier for us to use them in this function. So we'll promote to local variable. We'll call this L_class for L for local, and then class just because this is the class of the item we're going to add. We'll do the same for amount to add. We'll right-click, promote to variable, call it L for local _amount, and there we go. All right. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that we even have space in our inventory. So we're going to do a branch here. And now for the for checking if we have space in our inventory, we're going to create a function for that. So we'll say has space in inventory. All right. And this function will be pure and const. We can do that right away. Now what we want to do is loop through our inventory. So we'll get our inventory and we'll do a for each loop. We'll plug this in. There we go. So now what we'll do here is we'll take each array element and we're going to get its class, and we're going to check if its class is equal to, so equal to class, if it's equal to an empty item. Because if it's equal to an empty item, then we know that that slot is empty, and therefore we can, it's an open space that we can add another item to. All right, so we'll do a little branch off of the loop body, plug this in, and now off of the true, what we're going to do is add a new local variable. We'll call this L_open spaces, and we're going to take this variable and simply increment it. So we'll say increment int, plug it into true, and what this does is every time it finds an empty item or an empty slot, it just increments this and lets us know that we have open spaces basically. So now on completed, we're going to do a return node, and what we want to return is 2 things. So we'll add 2 outputs here. This first one we'll just call has space ? And this will be a boolean, and this second one will be open spaces, and this will be how many spaces that we have or that we found rather in our inventory. So that will still be an integer. So we'll take this local open spaces, we'll get it, and we want to check if it's greater than 0, because if it's greater than 0, then we know that we have space, and then we'll return how many open spaces there were. All right. So we'll come back into add item now, and we'll take this has space in inventory, drag it out here, plug it in, and now if this is true, then we're going to promote this to a local variable. We'll just call this L_open spaces again, plug it into true, and then if it's false, we're going to add a return node, and we're going to add an output to this that will be a boolean, and it will return whether or not we successfully added an item. So we'll call it added item, make it a boolean, and it'll be false. All right. Now I think for right now I'm going to stop the video, and then in the next one we'll pick up with this function because it is a long one, and for the sake of not completely boring you guys to death, we'll cover that in the next one. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you like it, like or subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.